Hello everyone, How to Make Games here, and welcome to How to Program in C++ Episode 5. In this episode, we are going to be discussing arrays. So let's start with the first item on our list. What is an array? So let me hop into GIMP here and sketch one out. So as you recall, when you were to declare a variable such as an integer, what happens is that you get a block of memory in your RAM that is big enough to store an integer. Let's make this one 4. What happens when you declare an array is that you get a stack of integers all nicely put together in sort of just this one long string. That is some number of elements long, and you declare the number of elements in length that it's going to be. So you're going to have your variable name and then the amount of elements for your array. So now, let's go create one in C++. So I want to create an integer array. Let's just name it A. And I want it to be 5 elements long. Now when you go to initialize an array, by default every element is going to be 0. But let's say I don't want it to be 0. Then I do brackets and then just declare each of the elements manually. So I can declare -2, 0, 7, 4, 2, and it has to be less than or equal to the number of elements I've given it. And you have to declare the size of the array when it comes to integers and float. However, character type arrays are special, so I will be going over those in the next episode. So you're probably wondering why I say it has to be less than or equal to the number of elements. Well, let's say I only want to make the first element in my integer array some sort of value. Then I can just put in 3, and then every element afterwards will be 0. So let me just see out my A array just to show you that the first element in the array is 3 and the rest are 0. So if you're thinking that you can just go C out A and then new line in order to get your array to show up, well, you might want to rethink that. So if I were to build and run, you get this little code that goes like 0x whatever. Really, the only similarity is going to be 0 and x. And what this is a memory location. Now, the name of the array is really just pointing at a block of memory. So I have my array here that is named A, and what A does is just go point at a block of memory, and then it just has some sort of address, which is basically where that block of memory is. It's usually different every time you run the program, but just know that A is referring to the location. But what if you wanted to access the individual elements inside your array? Well, that's when you use these brackets in order to refer to the element individually. So, I want to see out this first element. Well, what I would do is go to element 0, which refers to the element at the base address. And right now, that element is 3. Now, this is where things usually get confusing. So let me just reiterate what's going on. I declare an array of size 5. What then happens at a memory level is you got some variable named whatever you named it. It goes and points at a section of memory. And then it creates a block of memory big enough to hold however many types of variables you want. So 5 integers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 integers. And then what the brackets do when you want to access each individual element is it points inside the box so you can actually see the different numbers in them. So if you want to look at element 0, causes B to point inside to element 0. You want to look at the last element, point at element 4, causes B to look inside element 4. There will be a video sometime next week on pointers that will go more in depth to what's going on with these arrays. But just know you got a stack of memory that stores the same data type, okay? But what if I wanted to go and just show all the elements in my array? Well, I am going to have to use a loop. So if I were to just create a for loop, I equals 0, I is less than 5, increment I, then I see out A at the ith element, and then I just want a space, that way it's more clear as to which number I'm looking at. So if I were to build and run, I see my 3 and 4 zeros. And if I wanted to initialize each element, I should see 3, 1, 2, 7, and 3. Perfect. So just one more thing, and that's for C in with your array. So I'm just going to copy this for loop and then change this to C in. So once again, similar to C out, you cannot just C in your array because the variable for your array is referring to your memory location, and you cannot C in a memory location, but you can C in individual elements. So now what this will do, the computer will ask for 5 different elements to put into my array of A, and then it will just tell me what I put in. Let's test it. I want 3, 4, 56, 2, -1. And there's our array. So once again, you can have arrays of virtually any type. So I can create a floating point array, and it can also be however many elements long. And I probably should have made these decimals just to better prove my point. Oh yeah, you can store floats, you can store integers, and you can store characters. One more thing I want to discuss is the best practices for using arrays. So as I said before, they can store entire stacks of one data type. Let's say you are doing some sort of fundamental math program, and you wanted to show in the ones, tens, hundreds, etc. places of different numbers that users put in. And a user puts in, say, 1432, and then you want to break it up and then display each different place. Instead of declaring 4 different variables in order to store each place, what you could do is just declare an integer array. Just name it something like number, and then just some sort of maximum size of that number, and then C in, C out, just to show which number represents ones, tens, hundreds, etc. It's a lot cleaner and easier to read than declaring a bunch of variables of the same data type. It's just really important to know when do you declare only one variable versus when do you use an array. So that wraps it up for this episode. In the next episode, we are going to discuss the special properties of character arrays. So be sure to stay tuned, because next week we are going into character arrays, and we are going to be discussing pointers. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.